Hello, and welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining me while I explore the wide world of pens. And yes, I have another pen from Amazon. I've been on a roll lately. One of the reasons is sometimes I'll review a pen and I'll not check Amazon, and some people might prefer buying from Amazon, so now I try to look at Amazon regularly. And if some of you find pens on Amazon that you find interesting that you would like me to potentially look at, please let me know in the comments. So this pen arrived in a couple days, like you always expect. Not always happens, but always expect. And it comes in a really nice gift box. Holiday decoration. We'll flip it over. We'll see that ubiquitous barcode. Helps the robots find it when they're fulfilling your order. The sleeve just slips off. And we'll see a nice instruction manual, which is always good to have. I think this pen is geared towards the new user. A lot of pens are not. So it talks about the converter. You flip it over, and it talks about using a refill. And it's nice that it tells you to leave it nibbed down for a while to let that ink flow into the feed and get that nib ready to write with. It's always nice for them to appreciate your order in business, and also say if you have any problems, let them know. So the pen is held sturdily in place by those elastic bands. You get 8 cartridges, which is always nice. So those people that like cartridges, this might be a pen that you might want to consider. It's certainly a interesting minimalistic design, torpedo bullet shaped. It's very securely held in this package with those bands. The pen feels good in the hand. The first thought that it is on the light side, but it is small, and this is made out of aluminum. So therefore it is going to be on the light side. That finish is interesting, and I do like it. It has a little bit of texture to it, so it's not overly smooth and it's not overly rough. And there's just that little line in between the cap and the barrel. The cap unscrews with a lot of turns. Whoa, a lot of turns. Hopefully if you're in a rush, you figure out how to do that. And then we see a nice section, just a standard generic number 5 nib there. Standard plastic feed on the back. It's smooth, interesting, no fins or grooves that you normally see. The pen fits well in the hand as is. Again, it's a very light pen. The section's about a little bit small for me. It does post nicely. It is not exactly the most secure posting, but it's not going to fall off normally. And I'm not going to push it on too much because you have metal on metal and there's potential for marking. So why do I have this pen? Well, a month or so ago on Facebook, the promoter of this pen was saying that they wanted people to review it and they were willing to provide you with a pen. So I messaged the person and said I'd be willing to do a review, and they said okay. And the normal thing is you buy the pen and then they reimburse you for your payment. But when it come time for that, after I had ordered the pen, the person on Facebook disappeared, the account was removed, and the pen was on its way to me. I'd already had it in my shopping cart to begin with, so it wasn't like I wasn't interested in the pen, but it's always was nice to have someone support my reviews, but turned out to not be the case. So now we have the pen. I've paid for it, and I'm going to review it. What's also nice about the pen is it does come with a converter. The classic screw converter. It fits nicely. Looks like an international standard, but could be a little bit larger. I think it is a little larger. Has that spring in it, which I'm not a fan of, but, this is typical. not unusual for this type of pen. And there's no question it's made out of aluminum. We'll take a look inside a little bit later. Here we have the pen somewhat disassembled. I basically just pulled the nib and feed out. And it's generic number 5, you know, Chinese nib that we see all over the place. Just a typical injection molded plastic feed. Yeah, a little bit different than some of the other ones that I've seen. And yes, it does feel like aluminum. And if we look inside, we'll see it's all aluminum, machined aluminum in there. No cap liner. See how those threads were cut. Nicely done, cut threads. You know, the barrel has the same type of look to it. And the same cut threads. And that just basic international standard converter. Nothing special, but just of interest to look at the bits. So I'm going to do something I normally don't do. I'm going to use the provided cartridges, which came with the pen, which are these. And I thought it might be like an international standard, but it is not. It's a larger opening there. It's about the same size overall. It's a little bit of larger diameter, so it has a little bit more ink in it. A nice closure at the end. So we're going to follow the instructions where you push the converter in place. And I don't do this very often, but it should snap in place. Cartridge doesn't really feel solid like a converter does. We'll screw down the barrel, and we're going to set it upside down like this for 10 minutes, and let's see if that nib is going to write. So now that I've spent some time with this pen, and I actually got the cartridge to work and write, took a day, and I can't explain it other than the fact that it took a while for that ink to get past the ball at the end of that cartridge and saturate the feed and come down to the tip of the nib so it could go onto paper. Why was the cartridge hard to seat and hard to get ink to flow? On investigation, there's a little knob nib that sticks out that's an extension of the feed, and when you push in the cartridge, it's supposed to push up this little ball that seals the end of the cartridge, and I feel that that's doesn't stick out far enough in the section to really do that effectively. I mean, I put a lot of pressure on the cartridge to try to get it to seat, and it just took a while, and then the ball was only slightly removed. To me, if I was going to do this on a regular basis, I would first use a sharp instrument, could use a toothpick to pop the ball well away from the cartridge before I put it into the section. It's just not a good design. These parts have not been vetted. The engineering is not good. So overall, the pen, even though I like the surface in the beginning, it is on the slippery side. So it can, slip out of your hands. At 5 1/4 turns to take off the cap is extremely too much. And it's just single threaded. That's a simpler way to make threads, and they're nice and fine, and I'm certain it seals well, but it's just too many turns, especially for a pocket pen where you're wanting to write with it, but it will stay securely capped in your pocket if that's a concern of yours. I think the color is interesting, and I do like the color. They call it cyan blue. My eyes see a little bit of purple in there. We have LED lights mostly. It's a very cloudy, rainy day, so there's not any real sunlight coming in. This section, again, is slippery like the rest of the pen. It's the same finish throughout the pen. but it's not as bad, I don't think, writing as it is just trying to hold the pen in your hand. It just could be me. So I did some more research, and this company seems to be at least a distributor in America. I found a ball pen on eBay from them, and then I did more research on Amazon and found the same ball pen on Amazon. An interesting design for a ballpoint pen. And the price is also a lot less on Amazon than it is on eBay, which is also interesting. Being a shopper, I always find it worth exploring to see how a distributor would sell their product through different channels, eBay versus Amazon. Sometimes eBay is less expensive, sometimes a lot less expensive, and sometimes Amazon is less expensive. So, it pays to look for both locations. I haven't thrown AliExpress or Tobu or any of those other ones into the mix because they're a little bit more difficult to deal with, at least in my perspective. Amazon has that advantage, at least if you're in the United States and you have Prime, that you'll get it in a few days, and the shipping is always included for almost all products. Whereas eBay, you don't know when you're going to get it. If it does ship from the States, it generally comes in a couple days also. So let's see how that nib writes with that black ink cartridge. The pen writes well. It's fairly wet. It's smooth. One of the concerns I had is the Amazon listing said it was a medium nib. The box said extra fine, and it certainly writes like an extra fine nib. And it's smooth for an extra fine, which is nice. I have really a lot of mixed feelings on this pen, partially because of how I ended up acquiring it. And secondly, that cartridge just didn't fit well or feel well. Eventually it started writing, but it took a couple days, which is not something I don't think a new user is going to be comfortable with or being able to understand. The fact that they say a medium nib and they ship an extra fine. So those are things that make it, hard to recommend this pen. If you love this design and you want a nice small metal pen, it fits the bill. It's certainly not the least expensive, but there's no other pen I know of this shape and design. If you know of one, let me know. So now we're going to rate this pen. And I'm going to give it a 4.9. It gets one check for the nib and one check for the design. But where it really falls down is that nib is not a medium as they described. That finish is a little bit more slippery than it should be. I've had other anodized aluminum pens which also have a similar kind of smooth finish, but I'm familiar and comfortable with Karas Customs, and they generally have a much better finish from a tactile sensation. I haven't used a converter. I'm certain that'll work fine, but then I wanted to use a cartridge because I usually always use converters. This section is formed okay. It could be a little bit bigger for me, but then probably for a smaller hand that would work well. But overall, the pen just doesn't excite me. There's a couple things like the color, which I kind of like, but it's certainly not going to make my everyday carry. And I don't know what I'm going to do with it after that cartridge runs out, because it's not exciting to write with. There's many people who like extra fine nibs like this, and this certainly fits the bill. It's a nice black ink. That's nice. So those are things in its favor. You can get it on Amazon and get it delivered in a few days in the United States. So it's a tough call. But I present you the pen. I give you my impressions, and obviously the ultimate judge of the pen and its value is you, the viewer. If any of you have this pen, certainly let me know. I'd like to hear your thoughts and opinions on it, and maybe on a different color also. So we've reached the end of this video. Thank you for watching. May you find a pen that you enjoy and makes you want to write, because that's really what it's all about, is writing. So, hope you all are safe, healthy, and happy. We've reached the end of this video. We're going to say bye. And, you know, it is a consistent writer, just not a wow pen.